Good morning. I'm Sherry Prubis, Director of Teaching and Learning with Technology for the Virginia Community College System. I'm so glad so many of you are joining us today with Serby as we learn about making images accessible for the work that staff are doing to support faculty, staff, students, and the general public in Virginia. Um, Today, we are going to ask you to put all your questions in the Q&A. And for those of you who have a preference to read along with listening, there's a CC show captions. If you click that, you can read what we're saying along in the bottom. I will put resources as necessary in the chat, and we will be sharing the recording. It is my pleasure this morning to note Nitesh, who is our wizard behind the screen, working the slides for us, and Serby, who's our accessibility expert. Serby, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sherry. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back. It's so great to see you all here for our session 2 series of accessibility. So today we are going to dive into something super important, writing descriptive images, also known as alt text. So now you must be thinking, alt text sounds too technical, but honestly, it is not. It's just about describing visuals in a clear and thoughtful way when required to ensure that everyone gets the full experience, regardless of how they are accessing the content. By the end of this session, you will have the tools to make your content more accessible and impactful for sure. Next slide, please. Before we get too deep into things, let's take a quick look at what we are covering today. So here are our or I would say few main objectives of the day. First, we will start with why image description or why alt text really matters, especially in institutional settings. Then we will look at different types of images, things like charts, flyers, photos, and decorative images. Next, we will cover some core principles for writing effective alt text, which are simple, actionable tips that will help you write descriptions that are very useful, clear, and concise. From there, we will walk through real-time examples, so you will see how to apply these in context. We will also go over how to add alt text in common tools like Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, etc. So you will exactly know where and how to do this in your own work. And finally, we'll share some easy ways to test your content for accessibility, along with helpful resources that definitely you can bookmark for later. And we open up the floor for a live demo session by Nitesh and Q&A. So let's see how it works. Next slide, please. Let's start with the basics. What is alt text and why does it matter? Alt text, which is also a short form, or I would say abbreviation for alternative text, is nothing but just a brief description that explains the meaning or purpose of the image. So it's not just about what the image looks like, but what it is trying to communicate. So this is especially important for people who cannot see the image. It could be they are using any assistive technology, they could have any visual impairment, or they are using any screen readers. So alt text helps make sure that they are getting the same information as everyone else. And that is really the core of it. Without alt text, we risk excluding people who are blind or low vision, or could be neurodiverse, or even those who process information differently. And it's not just a best practice, definitely. It is required by the law under WCAG 2.1, the ADA, and Section 508. So if we are creating any digital content, it has to be accessible. And I think beyond compliance, good alt text supports everyone. Next slide, please. Now let's take a look at the slide. Imagine how a person using screen reader would interpret this image. There is no alt text, so without alternative text, there is no description at all. The screen reader might just say image or graphic. That's it. No context, no meaning, no other description. And it's not only screen reader users who miss out on information. A person who's viewing this on a phone with images turned off, or it could be someone else who has a process disorder who needs more of a written cues. They all lose access to that information. And if the image supported any key point, that information is lost too. Next slide, please. Now let's look at what happens when we include alt text. In this example, we have an image of a flyer, something very commonly used in most of the institutions, right? So if a student, staff, or faculty, or anyone can't see the image, alt text makes a huge difference here. So now, instead of just image or graphic, this time the screen reader will say, a colorful flyer for a fall festival event on Saturday, October 19th from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the campus courtyard. Activities include pumpkin carving, live music and food trucks, costume contest, and academic resources booths. So this information gives user access to the same information as everyone. And that is the impact of alt text. It closes the gap. Next slide, please. One of the most common question we hear is, do I have to write alt text for every single image? The answer, or a good answer, is no. Every image do not need an alternative text. What matters most is the purpose of the image. So let's look at few common types here. So first, we have decorative image, or I would say decorative images. These are visuals that adds style or visual interest, but do not actually communicate information at all. Things like background swirls, borders, icons, etc., that do not relate to the content. For example, if you have a swirl graphic just to enhance the slide visually, it does not have any information related to the context, right? So it is completely safe to mark that image as decorative. Next, we have informative images, which are the most important ones. These do carry meaning and definitely needs alt text. Now, look at the image on the screen. If you are using that image in your campus, alt text is definitely important. So you can use something like staff only parking sign at campus lot entrance. It doesn't have to be long or detailed, just clear, concise on the purpose. So it's all about making sure the message of the image is still available to someone who cannot see the image. Next, we have redundant images. So these are visuals that repeat information which is already right there in the text form. For example, if you look at the picture here, we also have a text that says graduation May 20th, 2025. Now, this text could be an article heading or anything. And you also have an image. So there are two scenarios. Either you can completely skip adding the alt text as it does not have any information which is not in the text, or you can describe the picture generally for a person to know what is actually there in the image. So since both the image and heading mentions graduation 2025, we don't need to include that in the alt text. Instead, we just describe the picture. So what it would be looking like is a group of diverse students in gowns joyfully throwing their hats in the air. So it clearly describes what is there in the picture. So when there is an image ask yourself, does the image teach something or does it support any context? If they don't see the image, will they miss out any information or anything that they should know? And if the answer is yes, you definitely need to write an alternative text. And if not, it's probably safe to skip to add alternative text, or you can mark it as decorative as well. Next slide, please. Now that we have talked about which images need alt text, the next question is, what do you actually write when writing in alt text? So it starts with asking the right questions, like what is the image showing and why is it there? Is it essential for understanding the content or it is just supporting it? Does it illustrate a process, gives instruction, or any other key information? Also, the information from the last slide here can help you understand if the image is decorative, informative, or redundant. Another important point is if a poster or if a poster or image is inserted to an email or web page, I would say, without an alternative text, screen reader will not be able to convey its content to visually impaired people. As a result, key information in the poster, like event details or calls to action, will be completely inaccessible. So let's look at quick examples. Look at this flyer that has key information regarding an event. Now, if the image does not load, will someone still be able to get the necessary information? Like the major important points are the date, venue, etc. Probably not. If the image is not there, this information is lost too. So a good alt text for this would be flyer for spring job and internship fair, March 14th, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. at Student Center Ballroom. It's short, clear, and gives all the necessary information that is required. So once you take a moment to think about what information does the image hold and what someone needs to know while writing an alt text, it becomes much more straightforward and easy. Next slide, please. So now that we have asked the right questions, the next step is actually writing the description or the alt text. But what makes an alt text defective? What turns a vague or overly wordy description into something clear and useful? So to help with that, I would like using a simple acronym called ACORN. It's not an official or universal known acronym. It is just a teaching tool designed to make good alt text easier to remember and apply. So here, what it stands for. A is for accurate. So focus on what actually is in the image, especially the key information. Skip decorative or artistic details that do not serve the purpose. C is for concise. Keep it short to the max 1 or 2 lines, as here for simple images, we are aiming for clarity, not a full description at all. O is for objective. Stick to the fact. Avoid assumptions, opinions, or even emotional language. Just describe what is visible. R is for relevant. Include only the detail that matters for the context. Think about why the image is there and what part of it supports the content. Next, and the last one is N for necessary. Include only the detail that supports the goal. For example, if you look at the image in the slide, the alt text says students sitting in a classroom listening to a lecture. So it's clear, concise, and to the point. So always ask yourself, what does someone need to know from this image while writing an alt text? Next slide, please. So far, we have talked about using ACORN to write clear, effective alt text for everyday images, things like photos, event flyers, icons, etc. But what happens when the images are more complex? Things like maps, charts, infographics that are packed with data. So take this image as an example. That's a lot to communicate, and trying to squeeze all of it into one alt text line is not really realistic at all. The thing is, you don't even have to do that. There is a simple way to handle complex images without overwhelming your alt text and still keeping everything accessible. So here's the approach in 3 steps. First, keep the alt text short and let users know where they can find more details. It could be a nearby caption, it could be a link, a descriptive link, or it could be a data table, anything. Just mention it clearly. The alt text should briefly identify the image and its purpose. That's it. For our example, something like illustrated campus map showing labeled buildings, roads, a central college, and key services. Extended description below. So this gives screen reader users a clear idea of what the image is without getting into every single detail. And also the information where they can find more details if they want to deep dive into it. Next, make the full detail available nearby. So alt text is not the place for all the data, but that information has to be accessible. You can include it in a caption, as I mentioned, link or a link description, or provide a data table nearby. For example, right below the image, you might write the extended description that you can see on the screen for the same image. So it is very important to remember one thing here. Any image that presents data or detailed information, like a chart, graph, map, or any instructions, must have the same information available in an accessible text format. It could be a table, list, it could be a different slide about a different page. It should be there, and the location has to be specified in the alt text. The next important point is you can also summarize key patterns in some of the cases instead of listing everything. Rather than describing the details in caption or text, if it is applicable, you can highlight the major points. Again, it depends on the context and purpose of the image. So what is the bottom line here? Alt text is not meant to do everything. Its goal is to introduce the image and explain why it matters. The rest, like detailed data or extended description, should be present elsewhere in a way that is easy to find and accessible for everyone. And definitely do not forget to mention the location in the alt text too. Next slide, please. Let's now shift gears and look at some common mistakes people make when writing alt text and how to avoid them. Take this image for an example. Something very commonly found in institutions again. A vague description like a flyer about math help might seem fine at first, but it doesn't explain why the image is there or what is the image trying to say. On the other hand, going too far, like a portrait-oriented flyer for the math tutoring lab is pinned to a corkboard. The flyer has blue background, circular image, etc., etc. It gives a lot of information, and it can be too overwhelming with unnecessary details. Then there are descriptions that miss the main point, like what if it says college advertisement about student support services? That's technically true, but it doesn't tell us what someone is meant to take away from the image. That is, it doesn't mention that it's a math tutoring lab, and also doesn't provide any of the crucial practical details like timings or locations, etc. So sometimes it could be also too jargon heavy, too heavy on words, which is hard to understand. For example, promotional material for an academic intervention program, facilitating quantitative subject matter comprehensive via didactic assistance. This kind of jargon can be more confusing than even being helpful. And finally, be careful not to repeat information that is already covered in the nearby text. So what would be a better version for this image? Something like open Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. in the Learning Center, room 101, call 555-1234567, or scan QR code for details. It's very clear, concise, and directly ties to the context of the image. The key is very simple here. Good alt text is all about helping someone focus on what they need to know and keep it accurate, relevant, and to the point. Next slide, please. Now it's your turn to try it out. We have talked through the basics of writing, alt text, and how context matters. So let's put that into practice with examples. So in the next upcoming slides, you will see an image first with no alt text. Take a moment there and think of an appropriate alt text that would fit the context and the purpose. Then in the slide after that, you would see the actual sample alt text, which you can compare with your own. So we might not be able to go over responses if you type in chat. So I would ask you to make a mental note, or you can write it on a paper or on a different document and do a comparison yourself. So let's dive in with our first example. Next slide, please. So here's a banner as your first practice example. Take a moment to look at the image and think about how would you describe it in an alt text. Make sure to keep it short, max 1 to 2 lines, and focus on what needs to be mentioned for someone who cannot see the image. So I'll give a couple of seconds here. Let's look at the sample answer in the next slide. Next slide, please. Here, the alt text says, banner for Inside Campus Staff newsletter. Very clear, short, and precise. This works well because it's to the point and highlights whatever is important. No need of any additional information, as it is self-explanatory for what the image is. So this was quite simple, I would say. We would move to a complex one going forward. So let's check our second example. Next slide, please. So take a look at this next one, which is a chart, and think about what alt text you would write for it, a brief one, and without missing key information. You can jot it down or just keep it in mind. Okay, let's check the sample. Next slide, please. So here is it. Bar chart showing attendance at 4 college events: orientation, guest lecture, workshop, career fair. Find full data in the next slide. So this for an alt text works well because it quickly explains what the image is. That is an overall information about the attendance of participants in 4 college events. Plus, it also tells where to find the full description. So for someone who is using assistive technology like a screen reader, quickly reaches the image and wants to know just a gist of what the image holds, gets all the information with this. Since this image contains a lot of detailed information like number of participants in multiple events, it can be too much to include all at once in alternative text. So that is where there's an option to find the detail as mentioned. So you won't be seeing the full data here. I have not added it as an accessible format, like it could be in a form of a table, text, or extended description. But you need to describe this completely in an accessible format, exactly what you see visually. So any key information that you're seeing visually should not be missed while describing that. And make sure to add the location in a form of a descriptive link, or if it's a slide number or any location where you are planning to keep that. Okay, so just a second. So here we covered what is required to write an alt text. But here I would like to give some quick tips about making your charts accessible, because even they are visual and it holds a lot of information. So it is another important factor of making your content completely accessible. So the first one is use high contrast colors so that the text and the bar stands out, especially for those with low vision or color blindness. Do not rely on color alone. Add patterns, labels, or symbols to convey meaning, because if any information is provided only through color, people with color blindness could miss that major information. Use clear, large fonts to help readability on all devices. So it is very self-explanatory that the font should be clear and big enough so that even if a person is using this, viewing the same content on a mobile phone, it's clear to read. Include clear, meaningful alt text or a written summary nearby if the chart is complex. This we have discussed above, like you have to provide a descriptive information if it has a lot of information. Ensures chart can be zoomed in without losing clarity or cutting off labels. So people using assistive technology, they use multiple tools to zoom in their content to 200% or above. So it should not lose any data when zoomed. Prefer static charts when possible. And if interactive, make sure it is keyboard accessible, because interactive charts can have a lot of actions to be performed. So make sure that you check that it is accessible via keyboard as well. Choose chart types and labels that are simple and focuses on the key message. So do not make it complex, make it clear and simple to understand. So what's the bottom line here? When using charts, think beyond visuals, think accessibility. Ask yourself, can a screen reader user understand this when they don't see the image? Can they access the same data? Is the message clear even without color? And if the answer for all the above is yes, you are in the right path of accessibility. So let's move on to the next example. Next slide, please. Now take a look at this one and think of an appropriate alt text. What could be the right short description for the same? Okay, so let's check out the sample example. Next slide, please. So here we have the alt text for this chart. Pie chart showing distribution of college annual budget. Find full data below. This is very crisp, clear, and a simple alt text that tells us what the image is about with no detailed description. It only highlights the important factors without getting lost in too many details. Because again, this is a chart with financial details, a lot of data, we also provide an extended description for more context to understand better. You can see the extended description in the slide. And if you read it, like, think, why is it so important? For data chart like this, one really needs to know what they are looking at and what details it holds. So by providing this information in text, it ensures that everyone, including screen reader users or those with low vision, can access the same data without losing any information. So now here are some quick tips for complex images. Keep alt text brief and focused on what the image is and its purpose. Use extended descriptions for detailed or data-driven information. Always ask, what information should someone get from this if they are not able to see the image? And make sure that information is accessible in text or any accessible format for the same. So let's keep going and move to the next example. Next slide, please. What about this one now? What do you think could be the right alternative text for an org chart like this? So this is again something very commonly used in organizations, institutions, etc. Could be very helpful. I'll take a couple of seconds here so that you can think of an alt text. Okay, so let's check the sample description. Next slide, please. So here we have the alt text for the organizational chart. It says organizational chart for the Virginia's Community Colleges, VCCS, senior leadership showing the structure from the state board to the chancellor, various vice chancellors, and the presidents of the 23 individual community colleges. Extended description, next slide. This is a great example of concise and purposeful alt text, I would say. At a glance, it shows multiple levels of hierarchy, but because of the amount of information and the structure it communicates visually, a simple alt text would not be enough here. So we have provided an extended description to ensure that the screen reader users can access full content and the meaning what it shows. So let's look at the extended description as mentioned in the next slide. Next slide, please. So in this extended description, you will see that a lot of information is included. It identifies the key individuals, their titles across different branches of leadership. It also clearly lays out reporting lines and includes the details like date of the chart and full list of college presidents shown in the separate section. So why does this matter so much? Charts like this carry important organizational information, and without a thorough description, people using assistive technology would miss critical content, like it could be who leads what area, how teams are structured, etc. So for complex visuals, extended description are not just helpful, they are essential for clarity and to understand the right information. So let's keep going and explore our next example. Next slide, please. Let's look at this one. What do you think? Could be a little confusing, but give it a try. Okay, so let's check the sample answer. Next slide, please. It says first floor plan of the HR and finance building with offices, cubicles, accessible restrooms, and emergency exits, extended description below. So this is another great example of clear and concise alt text. It tells us what the image is about, that it is a floor plan, and highlights the key areas, like what all it includes. So again, as this image contains more detailed information like office locations, entry points, emergency exits, and extended description is provided. So in this case, the purpose of the floor plan is to give an overview of what the building contains. So the extended description is appropriate and helpful, like what you can see on the screen. But there's one key point here. If the intended use of this image was for navigational purposes, like helping someone find their way in the building, then a more detailed and fully accessible format would be needed, which should include things like precise distances, directions like left, right, or north or south, and clear guidance on how to move between different locations. So that level of detail will ensure that individuals using assistive technology can independently navigate the space just as a sighted person would do using a visual map. So remember, always match the level of description to the purpose. That is the key point while describing any image. Let's quickly move on to the next example. Next slide, please. What, what do you think about this one? Something, again, you see quite often in your campus. Okay, let's check that out. Next slide, please. Let's break down the alt text for the calendar you just looked at. October 2024 staff event calendar with multiple overlapping deadlines and department meetings. Extended description, next slide. So again, this alt text is short and functional. It tells us what the image shows and the key takeaways that is required. But again, for someone using screen readers, that might not be enough. And that is where we need to provide an extensive description, or we can say a table or a list or in any format, but the same information should be provided. So let's look at the extended description that has been provided for this. Next slide, please. As you can see on your screen, the description is quite detailed. Since the image uses both icons and color coding to convey meaning, we provide an extended description to ensure that all users have equal access to the information. So why does this extended description matters here? Calendars like this use a mix of visual formatting, color, and icons to communicate important timelines. So without a detailed description, users using assistive technology will definitely miss key deadlines or departmental meetings completely. So this description will help not just what's happening, but when and how it is presented visually. So always remember any visual cues like color, symbols, layout, or directions should be conveyed through text in details so that all the users can plan and prioritize their work easily. Let's move on to the final example for the day. Next slide, please. So here's the next example of an infographic image. Think about an alternative text which can be useful in this context. Let's quickly check that out. Next slide, please. So let's take a closer look at how alt text gives a quick overview of this image. Infographic showing highlights from the 2024 annual report, extended description below. Since this infographic uses icons, layouts, and designs to present key statistics, we provide an extended description to ensure the content is fully accessible. So again, why is this important in this context? Infographics are popular because they summarize a lot of information. Um, um, Visually, maybe, like it gives a lot of information visually, but might not be the same for people using screen readers. So people who rely on screen readers, this visual formatting doesn't translate automatically. And without an extensive description, they will miss the actual data and the message behind it. So by describing both the content and visual structure, we make sure all users receive the same insight.
Okay. Survey will be right back. She's just taking a drink because she had a mild coughing.
So sorry for this. Okay, so yeah. So I think that wraps up our practice examples for today. Let's move forward and see what's next. Please give me a minute.
So one of the questions that we have is are the extended descriptions or the long descriptions entered? So alt text is what's entered in the alt text box. You'll see if you right click on the image, a menu pops up, and generally that menu gives you the option to view alt text with a box, and you put the alt text, the shorter description, in that alt text. The long description or the extended description is actually placed elsewhere, not in that alt text box. If you're using PowerPoint, it might be on the next slide. If you're in a Word document, it might be right under the image, or it might be as a footnote in the bottom of the Word document. And then you might have a caption under your image that says long description can be found in the footnote, and then you have a URL which immediately brings the person to that footnote. So we apologize for confusions, but only alt text goes in the alt text box. Long description goes somewhere else that's made obvious to the user, either through a URL or because it immediately follows the image. Okay, Serby.
Thanks, Sherry, for taking that up and also keeping the time in consideration. So thanks for that, and so sorry. So moving forward to the next slide. So as we have covered what alt text is and why it matters, let's look at how to add it using the tools you already use. We have included short video tutorials for some common platforms like Word, PowerPoint, etc. in the appendix slide, which you can definitely refer anytime later. And towards the end of this session, we will also have a live demo with one or two of these tools to walk you through in the process in real time. So that will take towards the end of the session. Until then, let's move to the next slide. Next slide, please. Before we wrap up, let's quickly cover how to test your alt text and where to find reliable resources. Most tools like Word, PowerPoint, etc. have built-in accessibility checkers. So make sure to use them and utilize effectively. It also helps to try a screen reader like JAWS in Windows or VoiceOver in iOS to get a sense of how it actually experiences with screen readers. Tools like Microsoft Accessibility Checker, as we already mentioned, Google's alt text features, and free browser extensions like Wave or Axe can catch missing descriptions, so make sure to check that before you publish your images. For official standards, check out WCAG Section 508 and the ADA if you want to deep dive. If you want to explore further, WebAIM's Alt Text Basic and WCAG 2.1 Quick Reference Guide are both excellent practical resources, so make sure to check that out. So this slide is basically a toolbox. Feel free to bookmark it, use it, and share it with others. Next slide, please. So as we wrap up today's session, let's zoom out and return to the bigger picture. Alt text is not just a checkbox, it's about providing access to all the learners. Here are a few key takeaways. Not every image needs alt text. Purely decorative visual images can be skipped. Use the ACORN method. Keep it accurate, concise, objective, relevant, and necessary. For complex visuals, combine brief alt text with an alternative extended description nearby and make sure to provide an accessible format, data-driven images like charts, tables, etc. Always consider the context in your audience. What should someone understand from the image? And don't forget to test your work using accessibility tools, screen readers, or even better, by getting feedback from the real users. Next slide, please. Thank you, everyone, for joining today's session on image accessibility. So here we have a quick look at what's coming up next. Session 3 will be focusing on video accessibility, caption, transcripts, and making multimedia inclusive. Session 4 will talk about on-page accessibility like headings, links, layout structure, etc. And session 5, we will tackle PDF and document accessibility, including how to tag content properly. So that's all from my side, and I would like to hand it over to Nitesh for a quick live demo session. Over to you, Nitesh. Thank you.
Thanks, Surabhi, for this wonderful session. So I'll start with the Word document, and I'm going to present how we can add alt text in this. So this is one of the image that we have seen in the session, so I'm just using that. Now, basis the Microsoft version or Office version you are using, there are different ways of adding this. So for example, if you are using latest version of Microsoft Office, you can go here, select the image, go to picture format, and you will see alt text button here. So you can select that, and again, you can add your description here. And if your image is decorative, you can select it by selecting this box, and this image will become decorative and it will not be read by a screen reader. If you are using any other versions or older versions of Microsoft Office, you can right click this, go to format picture. This box will open up. You can select the third one, which is layout and properties. And below the text box, you will have a alt text one, and you can add the alt text there. Same is the case with Microsoft PowerPoint. You can select the image which is added, go to picture format, add alt text, and again, similar interface, or right click format picture if you are using older version, and below the text box, you will have alt text to be added. If you are doing this in Google document, you can select the image and right click, and there is an option to add alt text. And again, you can describe the image here. So this is the way you can add alt text in your documents. Thanks. Over to you, Sherry, for Q&A.
So, one of the questions that I wanted to raise is that one of the issues that people often have is how they do a layout. I know we'll discuss this more deeply when we do the on-page session. But Surabhi, the question is, that someone uses tables to lay out the images and the text so they're visually attractive. How should they be laying out their images so that it's accessible and the screen reader is reading it properly? Because if you lay it out in a table and you have picture, you have image, text, the screen reader is going to read across. It's going to see the two images and then the two texts. So we don't recommend tables for layout, but Serby, what do we recommend for laying out physically attractive pages that are still accessible?
Okay, so am I audible?
Yes.
Okay, great. So first of all, as Sherry mentioned, we cannot use layouts for like for visual layouts. Table is not the ideal way. And if it has images and text, so what can be done best here is first divide those tables into simple tables, like simple, not too complex tables. And if it has images, you have to provide a text there if it is holding an information. For example, if that image is just an icon, a decorative image, or example, it's about students. There is a column header called students, and there is a picture showing some students sitting in a class. So that is completely decorative. So identify what information is important in the image. If it is not, you can completely mark it as decorative so that people using screen readers and keyboard, the focus will not even move to that image. And if it has any important information, definitely the best idea is to first, you have to provide an alternative text and break the tables into simple, understandable tables. And we'll deep dive into more about this in our 4th session, that is on page content. So I think you would, with examples, so that would make more sense to you when I show an example there.
Okay. And I just wanted to mention, somebody had asked a question about using Canva, Canva, not Canvas, the LMS, but Canva, which is used to create physically attractive materials. And there is a website, we have it here. I'm going to put it in the chat of a canva.com help using design accessibility. So I am putting that link in the chat. This is specifically for Canva users. Thank you. The person who posted it was anonymous, so please know that I appreciate that you sent this link. Thank you.
Yeah, one more thing I would like to add here. We also, in the appendix slide, which you receive this document later, you will find a link, a short video tutorial describing how you can add those alternative texts in Canva as well. So you can definitely refer that
Oh,
too.
thank you. Okay. So remember, the idea is we want all our audience, whether it's learners, public service, partners in the business world, we want everybody to be able to access our materials and gain the information and the learning that they need to do. So we need to start thinking a little bit differently about how we do this. And we don't want to limit ourselves to thinking, oh, somebody has this disability, so we need to do that. It's really part of a whole philosophy of universal design, which is that in any moment in time, each of us learns in a different way, sometimes audibly, sometimes visually, sometimes a combination, like having closed caption during a session like this. And so how can we provide appropriate alternatives so people can learn in the manner that works for them? So we do want you to keep that in mind, this universal design, that we want to make it so all materials are available to all learners, to all audiences. We thank you for participating with us. We'll see you in about 2 weeks for the session on making accessible videos. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, and have nice day ahead.
Thank you.